Good evening. I'll make that 7 o'clock bang on. Good evening to those here tonight and those joining us online. Welcome to the Planning Committee, Tuesday, 29th of April. We're in for an action-packed evening tonight, so we're really looking forward to it. First item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Any here tonight got any declarations of interest on the agenda? I see that's a negative, thank you. Second item on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting that were held on the 22nd of April, a distant past now. Those that were present that evening, are you content to record this as a true and accurate record of proceedings that night? Thank you for that. Okay, item 4. Just before I do that, I'll just record the apologies for this evening. I should have done that first. I do apologise. We have 3 apologies I've been made aware of. Councillor Jill Williams, who I am informed is substituted by Councillor Jones. We've got Councillor John Williams, also substituted by Councillor Edgerton Plunkett. Good evening. And we have Councillor Burnett Faulkner, substituted by Councillor Sweeney. Thank you very much. Do we have any further apologies? No.
So if I say something, Chairman, it's not an apology, but Councillor Amy Bryan's due here, and she's not arrived yet.
That's unusual, isn't it?
It is, yes, but Councillor Wielden's sitting over there. So would it be possible if she hasn't come for sort of the next 10 minutes, then we could put Councillor Wielden in?
If members
she's a substitute for this committee.
Yeah, if members are content with that. No objections?
So if we give Amy a few minutes yet and then...
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
It is actually. Okay, first item of the substantive business of the evening is item 4 on the agenda, found pages 7 to 18 in your agenda pack. And that's application for major development, former Midway car park. I believe we have Mr. Cruz of Capital and Centric, who's also going to take us through applications 5 and 6, which includes the land at Merrill Street and the application for York Place. Would you like to come forward? I think you're down at the end there. Thank you. May begin when you're ready.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. My name is Martin Cruz. I'm Development Director at Capital and Centric, a social impact regeneration developer based in the Northwest. Firstly, what I want to say is how truly excited we are to have this opportunity to bring forward 3 such transformational developments in the town of Newcastle-under-Lyme, and how we think this is going to truly change the place, both in terms of bringing new residents into the town, but also help stimulating the economy through a new vibrant bar, restaurant and cafe scene. What I wanted to do is briefly talk about the 3 schemes and sort of our rationale behind them, which hopefully will come through in the design. So if I start in reverse order with Astley Place. So we all know the former shopping centre fell into disrepair and struggled to bring in tenants. And what we've done there is bring forward a development which really will create a new focus for the town in terms of independent bars, restaurants and cafes. Our current proposal shows 10 commercial units, which we'll be looking to let to independent bars and restaurants, primarily which we believe will help reposition the town, create a new market and actually bring discretionary spend into the town, which will then spread further into the wider economy. By bringing forward new buildings and empty units within the town with other bars and restaurants, improving that model. Above it, we're delivering 42 residential apartments, which will be let and will retain ownership of this whole building beyond completion, and will be let to the market. And in the square to the rear, where you see the demolition of the existing part of the existing supermarket, what we're going to do is create a pocket park which will be open for everyone, but also allow the bars and restaurants to spill into and to create a burden area that will be open 365 days of the year, not just for those who live there, but for the whole residents of Newcastle to enjoy. Secondly, when we look at what we now call Rye Park and the brownfield site, the former civic centre and the supermarket and the Plainsbury supermarket, our aspiration there was actually to create a homes within a park. And hopefully that comes through as part of the proposals, that it really was a landscape first approach and how we can create this new gateway into the town and actually force people through the direct people through the sites to actually enjoy that space and the greenery that we're going to create there, with the extensive landscaping, which will be from day one. We can assure you it won't be small plants at the beginning. From the minute we finish this project, it will look verdant and green and be a place that people want to walk. And really the aspiration came for this when we went to Copenhagen and saw these sort of play along the way, and how young people actually utilise spaces with parklands and sort of play swings, and actually encouraging young people, and of all ages I suppose, to actually sit and use that space, and creating a park not just for lucky 200 or 250 people who live on the development, but for the wider town. And it creates a community assets. And then finally, probably one of the most exciting developments in our portfolio, and I think probably nationally, is the bringing forward and the repurposing of the Midway car park, a 1960s structure with a huge amount of embodied carbon that, previously, and I think, could easily have been demolished. But actually, by retaining that structure and bringing forward phenomenal architecture and a place-making development, we genuinely believe it's going to not only put Newcastle-under-Lyme on the map from an architectural perspective, but create a phenomenal space for residents to live. In there, we've got 5,000 square foot of tenant amenity space that all the residents who live within our developments in Newcastle will be able to enjoy, with a residents' gym, community lounge and private dining space. But we'll create a really great community and strong asset management. And again, what we'll look to do is retain ownership of all these 3 sites in the long term and be a long-term steward for that. So thank you very much for considering applications, and I hope it's a positive outcome. We can't wait to get started.
Thank you for that, Mr. Cruz. I know we've met at SPCG, and we've seen different incarnations of these projects as they've moved along, and I think we can all safely say that that's been very beneficial to all parties, that we've had a chance to look at these things as they've been progressing, and for members to have a say in how that's formed. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your team for cooperating with us so far, and look forward to hearing more about these developments. So I'll just hand over now to Rachel, who's going to go into detail in terms of the substantive.
Thank you, Chair. So starting off with the Midway, that's the first item on the agenda. So full planning permission is sought for the repurposing of the former Midway car park structure into residential accommodation consisting of 111 apartments and associated communal facilities. The site lies within the Newcastle Town Centre Conservation Area. Can see it here on the map. I'm sure all members are fully aware of the building. So it fronts Lower Street, Ring Road to the southwest, and the Midway to the northeast. The proposed scheme would comprise 78 one-bed and 33 two-bed apartments across 5 floors. Significant elements of the existing structure of the car park would be retained and repurposed, and the footprint of the building would remain the same. Cuts to the existing slabs and central spine wall would create a central void and open up the existing interior to create new internal circulation spaces. And a new roof structure would be added at roof level to provide additional residential accommodation. So this is the floor plan of the lower ground floor, which fronts onto Lower Street. Obviously, you'll be aware that there's quite a significant difference in levels between Lower Street and Midway, which is why this is kind of a lower floor. So vehicular access on Lower Street at this point here would be retained, providing access only to the substation and plant, which is in this area here. Moving on to the first floor, a new vehicular access would be formed at the eastern end of the Midway site frontage. So that's here into the car parking area. So the car parking area is underneath the level of the Midway. So access would be down this ramp into the parking spaces. So a drop-off lay-by is proposed on the midway frontage outside the main entrance. Refuse collection and other servicing would be focused on the midway, with the bin store also on that frontage. Loading bay areas would be provided on the site frontage as part of a new landscaped area for use by refuse collection and other delivery vehicles. The site management team would move the bins to this area for collection. Domestic and community waste and recycling stores would be incorporated at level 2 and accessed directly from the midway. So 49 car parking spaces are proposed, comprising 45 standard spaces and 4 accessible spaces. 116 cycle spaces would also be incorporated across the development. The Highway Authority has no objections to the application subject to conditions. So this is what's referred to as floor 2, but from the midway level, it's the ground floor in effect and the main entrance into the building. So this is the main entrance courtyard here, at this point here, in a centralised location, providing level access from the midway. This would utilise the existing vehicular entrance to the car park. From this main entrance, apartments would be accessed via open air walkways, framing the new void space between the rows of accommodation. So all accommodation will be provided with a recessed balcony or terrace, so providing significant elements of private amenity within the scheme. And further amenity space would be proposed with a communal roof terrace at level 5. So just looking at the other floors. So this shows the general arrangement. So we've got here a mix of 2-bed and 1-bed apartments, and this is the void that I referred to previously above the main entrance. So this is the amenity space on the roof level. These are the units that have been that you'll see later coloured in red that are at roof level. So this is a section through the development taken centrally, just to show you what I was referring to about the difference in levels. So we've got Lower Street here and Midway here. So that's the main entrance for pedestrians into the building. And as you can see there, the car parking is underneath and accessed via that ramp. So it doesn't show particularly well, given the scale of the building, and trying to show it on, sorry, I've just gone forward too quickly, trying to show it at this scale. But you can see there, that's this is the elevation on Midway, and that's the entrance that I've referred to several times. So you can see there Morstan House, which is has got planning permission recently to convert to residential, and that's also residential accommodation at the other side. So that's the elevation from Lower Street. So these are the additional residential units that are being added onto the roof of the building. So this is a section just to show in more detail the proposed materials. So there'll be a combination of the existing grey concrete structure of the existing building with red, black and charcoal coloured cladding. The new roof structure would be a series of pitches, and the gable ends to those pitches, which you can see here, would be clad in red square profiled metal. And then columns of black perforated corrugated cladding would feature at regular intervals along the frontages to Lower Street and Midway. So the proposed new facades are designed to be contemporary, but to draw reference from the architectural features and tones of the area. It's considered that the articulation of the roof pitches would add variety to a mixed roofscape, in contrast to the existing expansive area of flat roof. That's probably the best image to show you overall how it's proposed that the building would look. So it's considered that the scale and design of the development would be appropriate, and with the implementation of an appropriate landscaping scheme to soften the building, it's not considered that there would be any adverse impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area. So the site is within the conservation area, as I mentioned previously. A heritage statement that accompanies the application concludes that there would be no harm to the significance of designated or non-designated heritage assets, stating that the proposed development would repurpose and enhance a building that is recognised as currently making a negative contribution to the conservation area. Your officers agree, stating that the development would make a positive contribution to the area. So the introduction of a residential use in this area should benefit the town centre, making it a more vibrant place, providing more activity and natural surveillance in this area of the town centre, and should help to lift the area. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rachel. At this point, I'd like to invite Councillor Wheeldon, as she's so kind to take up the position for Councillor Bryan. I've texted Councillor Bryan, I've had no reply as yet. So thank you, Councillor Wheeldon, for stepping in. So at this point, I'll open it up to members. I've got Councillor Fear who wishes to speak first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Now, you said we were in for some interesting things this evening, and in some ways I think this is probably the most important planning committee I've attended in some years, given the amount of material that we're looking at with the town centre. And I think, when we look at this, and this I think possibly is the most important of all of these developments, it does show this council's commitment to taking the borough forward. Car parks are not particularly lovely structures. The 1960s was a particularly awful decade for architecture. And our car park, the Midway, has expired in terms of its function, and it's been replaced, of course. What I like about this, and I think, what was said by the developer is right, that this sort of development, this sort of ingenious way of reusing a car park without having to demolish it and begin ab initio again, really is something that may put our borough on the map in a way, because there are lots of these things out there. And this is, it seems to me, the most dynamic way of treating this that I've seen. I very much welcome the idea of a residential boost to the centre of town. I think places which are lived in by a community are looked after more. People feel much more ownership of this area. I also feel that that community will produce a demand for independent retailers, and it will increase the retail vibrancy of the area as well. So there is much to be said in favour of this scheme. I also, because let's be honest, the Midway is just like a giant concrete brick dropped on the edge of the city centre. I like the way that the treatment of this is going to happen externally. In particular, I like the idea of a variegated roofscape. Rather than just a big flat horizontal line, things will be broken up in a way which is respectful, I think, of the history of the borough, but will also make, looking down from where I'm coming from Keele, it will make the centre of the borough that little bit more interesting. All I can say, and I'm sure Councillor Holland will agree with me, what a shame that over the heads of this committee, the Dark Tower was permitted to spoil that in the background. But this goes a long way, I think, towards alleviating that. In that respect, I think that there are very many pluses here. There are very few minuses. I think this is something which can put our borough on the map. It's something that our city centre definitely needs. I agree with our officers that this will provide a lift, and I very strongly believe, having lived abroad in areas where town centres are very much more lived in than they are in England, that this will be a major improvement to the ambience of the town centre. As such, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Other councillors wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Weirden.
I'd just like to say from my observations, having rather like Councillor Fear worked abroad an awful lot, one of the things that appeals to me from this design is that you can actually walk out of where you're living into a commercial area, and that is just such a plus. I find that on Facebook, one of the criticisms that people make is, oh, do we really need this? What's happening to the town centre? But having sort of chatted amicably with people, it tends to be the people who buy online anyway. So they're not having any input. But if it's on your doorstep, if you're actually out of your front door and you can walk through to the shops, that's always been a great plus for me, whether it was China, Siberia or Mauritius. That every hotel I had or every apartment I was put up in had that facility. This is a unique design, and we're a benchmark almost and a pilot for other people to try and copy. I thoroughly recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weirden. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. Agree, obviously, with Councillor Fear in relation to the planning inspectorate's approval of certain other structures in our town centre scape. The Conservation Advisory Working Group described this development, this proposal as brave, and I think they mean that in the sense of original and ambitious, and not in the Yes Minister sense of a courageous mistake. And on that basis, I warmly welcome the application and the thoughts of the Conservation Advisory Working Party, particularly because it is accepted that the structure as it currently is a net negative on our town centre. We are not benefiting in any way from it because it's not currently in use as a car park. It cannot be used as a car park reasonably in the 21st century, and something being done with it, more so than it being knocked flat and redeveloped ab initio, as Councillor Fear said, is an excellent thing. There is only one thing that I think that I can comment on with disappointment, which is that there is a viability assessment attached to this, which says that there are certain contributions, financial contributions, that cannot be made because the scheme would not be viable otherwise. We do need education and healthcare and infrastructure. Those things are essential. They're not optional, and it is always a shame to me when we consider an application if we cannot receive a necessary financial contribution. However, I always say, and I do comment quite regularly on applications where this is an issue, you offset that against the benefits that the development will bring. And in this case, it's not just the benefits that the units, the housing units that are going to be put there will bring, but it's also the bringing back into use of a site on the edge of the conservation area that is currently a crumbling ruin, and it is a key part of the general scheme that's being put forward in other applications tonight. So on that basis, Chair, I would like to second Councillor Fear's proposal.
Thank you for that, Councillor Holland, and yes, I agree with your sentiment entirely. This is exciting times for Newcastle, and also, you know, it's once in a lifetime chance to regenerate the town. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chairman. I know a number of planning members are also members of the Employment and Places Committee, and over the last couple of years, I think we haven't had a meeting where these particular issues haven't been discussed and reported on. So I think many of us have come along this evening understanding the regeneration aspects of the proposal. As far as I'm concerned, if I can use the cliche, you're knocking on an open door with that, really, as far as I'm concerned. It is a bold application. I can understand why the developers have looked at sort of softening the concrete that is left with the roofscape. I suspect that is going to be the most controversial publicly sort of aspect of the the application, but I can understand why it's been done. And yeah, I certainly accept the reasons. And I think for me, what is quite refreshing about this application is that councils in the past have always been accused of being too ready to demolish. And I think this is an example where we're saying, no, we're going to repurpose. We're going to take an unloved building and try and do something with it that is constructive. So I'm mindful to endorse the application as moved, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, if I can just add a few words, really. Of all the schemes we're looking at tonight, like Martin says, I think this is the most exciting, the transformative scheme that we're doing, and repurposing a rather unattractive sort of 1960s car park, I think is something that will really put Newcastle on the map. And I've said before at the LJA conference, CNC were surrounded by other councils who were looking to speak to them, and it wasn't a token visit. They were there for sort of 2.5, 3 days. They were there all the time, and I think we will find that councils throughout the country will come to look at this. I think, my word, we could do that with our redundant 1960s monstrosity of a car park, rather than just pull it down and start from scratch. I think it's an absolutely superb concept, and I look forward to working with them. Thank you. I will also add as well, like Councillor Gordon says, we've been as open as we can with this. It's gone to, economic development play every time these things with pictures of it and everything else. We try to engage everybody with it, and I just think it's such an exciting scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Okay, there's no indication, so I'll take the formal recommendation and proposal made by Councillor Fear and seconded by Councillor Holland as printed. Please can I see a show of hands in support of this, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. That item is obviously approved. Brings us on to agenda item 5. Pardon?
No, it's my ineptitude at using my computer.
Sorry. I thought you had something to add there, Councillor. Land at Merrill Street. Agenda item 5 in your pack. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Full planning permission is sought for a development of 53 retirement apartments, which would be age restricted to 55-year-olds and above. The site is part of the wider master plan aspiration for Rycroft, which includes, just showing you here the master plan, say multi-storey car park there, a residential development scheme that will be that Mr. Crews made reference to and we'll be looking at later on the agenda, and this is the current scheme that we're looking at now. So the site adjoins the Newcastle Town Centre conservation area. The proposed 4-storey development would comprise 37 one-bed and 16 two-bed apartments, all of which would be self-contained with communal facilities, including a shared residence lounge, mobility scooter store, attached refuse store, and communal garden. The location of the development has been dictated by the existing site constraints and the shape of the available plot. So you can see here the footprint of the building on the site. It would be L-shaped with the longer elevations facing the wider Rycroft site. So here and here facing out onto the rest of the site, while the shorter elevations would face Rycroft here and the rear of the elevations, the rear elevations of buildings along Merrill Street here. So this is the access into the site off current Rye Bank. There is currently an access at that point. There are 2 other accesses into the site which will be closed off. So that will be the sole access, and this will be the car park area here to the rear. So the existing levels, that's just showing you the floor plans of the building. So that's the ground floor, which shows a mix of 1-bed and 2-bed apartments, the 1-bed being in pink. And this is the communal lounge area, reception area, and things like the bin store and the buggy store. And then that's an example of one of the other 3 floors with the mix of the 1-bed and 2-bed apartments. So the existing levels within the site have been reduced, allowing the height of the building to be consistent with the surrounding developments along Merrill Street. The building would be flat roofed also to minimise its overall height. The primary materials would comprise 2 different tones of red brick, which doesn't show it particularly well on here, but the ground floor is proposed to be a darker colour red than the upper floors, with contrasting buff brickwork to add architectural interest to the facades and to respond to the surrounding context. The window reveals would provide articulation and depth to the facades, and the language would be simple but contemporary and clean. A residence garden is proposed. I'll just go back and show you that. So this is the residence communal garden area here with direct access from the communal lounge of the building. So the landscape design, boundary treatment and planting of new trees along the site boundaries would help to soften the appearance of the development and associated car parking. So it's considered that the design and massing of the proposed building would be consistent with both existing development and that proposed on the remainder of the wider Rycroft site. So as I said earlier, access to the site would be from Rye Bank, with a car park proposed to the south of the building. It will provide 22 spaces, including 2 accessible spaces. So the maximum parking standards in the local plan for this type of development require a maximum of 1 space per 3 dwellings, which equates to 18 car parking spaces for the proposed units. A transport statement submitted with the application looks at other McCarthy Stone schemes in comparable locations and concludes that 22 car parking spaces would be suitable for the proposed development. No overspill parking is anticipated to occur, with suitable on-site provision provided in balance with the expected demand and local standards. So a heritage statement that accompanies the application concludes that the proposed development will cause no harm to how the significance of the conservation area is understood, and that there are no other designated or non-designated heritage assets which would be adversely affected by the development. The Conservation Officer agrees with the findings of the heritage statement and raises no objections to the scheme. So this is streetscape views just to show you the relationship of the building with the existing and proposed development. So these are the existing buildings on Merrill Street. The wider master plan developments will be behind that building and over to the right hand side here. And this is a view on Merrill Street. So the existing buildings on Merrill Street at the frontage, and then the building there behind. So this is quite a good image just to show you what the building will look like in relation to the existing buildings. And you can see there the quite well the proposed design and the materials. That's a close up. You can see there a bit better the 2 different red tones of brickwork. That's an image, a visualization of the internal courtyard area. So this is, sorry, I'll just get, so this is a previously developed site in a highly sustainable location within the area. The site is an easy walking distance, obviously, of the shops and services of the town centre. It's considered that the site provides a sustainable location for additional residential development that would accord with the town centre supplementary planning document. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. As for the previous application, I'm not aware of any speakers or objectors to the scheme. I'll now open it up to councillors. Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I think we should welcome this scheme. This is a site in our town centre which has lain dormant for some time now. What we're seeing this evening is, again, breathing new life into an area which desperately needs, I think, new life to make the town centre to live an extra time. I welcome what the Conservation Officer says, and I also thank the office very much for the drawings that we saw, which I think place the development in context a little and make it, certainly for me, far more understandable in that regard. And I can see how the proposed finishing of the building will fit with the frontage on Mariel Street. It's not a particularly ambitious building, but nonetheless, it's not an unhandsome building, and it is a planning gain over the supermarket that was there prior to this site, and is certainly a planning gain over the wasteland which is currently on that site. As such, again, I think it shows, that the council, and unfortunately I wasn't at the full council, but I know that there was cross-party support for the regeneration of our town centre in this regard, and I think this once again is showing that we are committed to breathing life into our town centre, making it a vibrant place. Again, I think the fact that we're having here residents within the town centre will help that in a very great way, in my personal opinion. So once again, I welcome this development and would wish to move the recommendations as they're printed in front of us.
Thank you once again, Councillor Fear. Duly noted. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Wielden and Councillor Brown.
Just a comment really to say that it's an incredibly innovative programme of building yet again. People sometimes forget when they're involved in developing and the focus is on starter homes for young things. The over 55s tend to get forgotten. And as far as I'm concerned, they are the anchor of a community, and to be so well looked after so that they've got everything on their doorstep, which this particular development has for the older population, is to be applauded and recommended. I think it's exemplary, and I congratulate all the councillors on planning who voted for it, and also the developers too who designed it. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Wielden. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo the comments already made. I'm just a bit concerned about the parking specification on a 1-to-3 ratio. Over 55s these days certainly aren't the pipe and slippers brigade that we were led to believe years ago. They've got very active lifestyles and they would probably want to have visitors too. So I'm wondering whether the 1-to-3 is a specific specification for over 55s. I'm just concerned thinking about the number of parking issues we do have in the centre of town, that this could displace some parking.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do you want to come back, Rachel? Thank you.
Well, those parking standards that are referred to are for this use class of development, which is sheltered housing developments. So, yeah, requires a maximum of 1 space per 3 dwellings. McCarthy Stone have obviously have a lot of experience of dealing with these types of developments and have assessed similar schemes in similar locations and are satisfied that the proposed number of spaces is sufficient. Obviously, we're in a highly sustainable location here, where people would be able to access bus services, etc. There is also mobility scooter storage proposed, and which would accommodate space for cycles if required. The Highway Authority have raised no objections to the application. So I think in this sustainable location, and given that the parking standards that we have currently are as set out, 1 space per 3 dwellings, and this actually exceeds those, that we would be unreasonable to take issue with that.
Councillor Brown, do you want to come back on?
No, only to say thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Gorton, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really wanted to begin by saying that I think the application will challenge the criticism that too much, student accommodation and accommodation for young professionals has been provided, and it's good to see an application that is going to cater for the needs of a more diverse population. My only question really is something that I think the Conservation Planning Group may have mentioned, and it struck me as being a good point. I'm sorry, it's to do with parking, and that is the apparent lack of designated parking for carers. Now, I am a bit surprised at that because I would have thought that that ought to be considered rather differently from, say, visitors or residents, having parking set aside for carers, looking after the over 55 population of residents. So that mission sort of surprised me a bit.
Thanks, Councillor Gorton. Just come back.
So yeah, there would ordinarily be only one full-time member of staff at the site, the house manager, because this type of accommodation is for over 55s who require limited support to allow them to live a relatively independent life. So there would only be that one member of staff ordinarily. And the data that McCarthy Stone have provided of other similar developments elsewhere actually includes residents, visitors and staff all within those calculations. So officers consider that there's appropriate number of spaces for all, not just the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon.
It's been commented on, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holland.
It's heartening for those of us who are getting on in years to hear younger councillors like Councillor Brown and Councillor Wheeldon taking such a keen sympathy with the older residents. I think, as our officers have said, these are retirement apartments. I think, in accordance with the expected customer and occupier of those apartments, the parking scheme is acceptable and within policy. Reflecting on something Councillor Gorton said about the previous application, the pitch has been extensively rolled for this and other applications on the agenda tonight in terms of the principle. So it falls to us to be considering as a planning committee the policy compliance of these applications. The application in front of us seems to me, it's not on the screen anymore, but the application seems to me to be compliant with policy and to deliver manifold benefits to our town centre by developing a site that's been left to ruin, to be blank, as it were, a blank slate for too long. I would like to second the proposal made by Councillor Fear earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Wheeldon.
Just one final comment, and please don't giggle too loudly. I love the fact that we're all talking about car parks and that our car park has recently been designated as the cheese grater. We've got the Shard, we've got the Palm in Dubai, we've got the Burj Al Arab, and we've got the Gherkin in London, and we have the cheese grater, and it's good that it's got a nickname because it makes it more homely.
Yeah, thank you for that interesting perspective, Councillor Wheeldon. Okay, any other councillors wishing to comment on the application? Okay, so we've had it formally proposed and seconded by Councillor Fear and Councillor Holland. Do I see any other proposals? It's a negative, so can we vote on the proposal as printed? Thank you, councillors. That's unanimously passed. Thank you. That brings us on to item 6 on the agenda, application for major development 5 to 7 York Place, Newcastle-under-Lyme, found on pages 31 to 44 of your agenda pack. And this item also includes a supplementary report, which I assume everybody has had a chance to read. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Full planning permission is sought for the repurposing of the former York Place shopping centre into commercial units at the ground floor and 42 apartments on the upper floors. Again, members will all be aware of the site, I'm sure, but just to show you here on the plan, so the site edged in red, it has frontages with Merrill Street, High Street, Lad Lane, which is just there to the southeast, and Fog Street west. It lies within the Newcastle Town Centre Conservation Area and close to a number of listed buildings, including the Old Bull's Head pub, which is just here, and St Giles's Church just there. So just for a bit of context, the site, the wider Rycroft site is just here, across the other side of Merrill Street. So the site we've just been looking at, the McCarthy Stone one, is just off the plan to the north, and you can see the former civic offices there, which is will be the site that we're going to be going on to talk about next. So in 2023, the Planning Committee resolved to permit a scheme for the demolition of the shopping centre and the construction of 2 mixed-use 3- and 4-storey buildings with upper floor offices and ground floor retail and food and beverage units. Consent was subsequently granted last year for the demolition of the shopping centre to facilitate its conversion, and those works are currently ongoing. So York Place Shopping Centre was built in the 1960s and was 3 storeys in height, with roof deck access for deliveries and parking. This proposal would see the core of the existing building largely retained and repurposed, including the existing concrete frame and floors. Part of the rear access ramp leading to the delivery area is to be demolished to allow for an external connection between Merrill Street and Astley Walk, and the creation of a public square, which is here to the rear of the building. So this is the ground floor with the commercial units of varying sizes. And then this is the landscape area that we referred to at the back, with the access through here off Merrill Street. So then floors above are a mix of 1-bed and 2-bed apartments. So you can see there the 1-bed in light blue and the 2-bed in the darker blue. The grey areas are the circulation areas and how people access the individual units. And then there's a landscaped terrace area there. And I think, yeah, that was, sorry, so that's the top floor of the scheme. So again, doesn't show up particularly well on a screen of this size, with a development of this size, but the proposed materials would consist of brown toned standing seam cladding for the frontages, with glazing to the ground floor for the commercial units. Dark grey window frames, dark grey cladding would be used for architectural detailing, and the roof line would be pitched with dormer style windows, which you can just probably see best there, but I will show you some images that show that better. As referred to previously, a green public square would be located to the rear of the building, adjacent to Astley Walk. Sorry, these are just the other elevations of the building. So that's from yeah, looking that's High Street there. So that's kind of the side of the frontage onto High Street, and that's Astley Walk through there. And this is the rear of those units on Merrill Street that you would see from Astley Walk and the green space at the rear. more images of the rear section with the dark grey cladding. I think these are probably the best images to show you. So that shows you what I referred to previously with the dormer windows with the so with a slight pitch on the roof, and the standing seam cladding for the frontages. So you can see there, this is the Merrill Street elevation. So you can see the walkway through to the green space at the back. And above there is the access between the units. So the heritage statement submitted with the application concludes that there will be no erosion of the significance of the conservation area, and there'll be no erosion of the significance of either the Old Bull's Head or other nearby listed buildings. The Conservation Officer comments that the scheme is bold and high quality, and that the colour palette would be effective within the town and a good balance against the adjacent historic buildings. So it's considered that the proposed development would be appropriately sited, of suitable height, scale and mass, and would use tones and materials characteristic of the conservation area and consistent with nearby listed buildings. The appearance of the development, due to the active frontage at ground floor and the appropriate use of materials, would present a high quality building that would be a significant improvement on the existing York Place and would enhance the site, street scene and conservation area. No car parking is proposed within the site, and servicing of the units would be undertaken through either Merrill Street or Iron Market. Cycle parking is provided for residents and visitors, and servicing arrangements would be provided in line with those found acceptable when considering the previous application. The current disabled bays on the Merrill Street site frontage would be used for loading and unloading between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. and other loading and unloading associated with servicing of the site will either be accommodated within the existing loading and unloading controls on High Street or through use of Fog Street West, where loading and unloading is permitted throughout the day. So the lack of car parking is in line with the existing situation and the previous planning permission granted by members. It's forecast that the development will be associated with a low level of parking demand that can be accommodated in the other town centre car parks. An impact assessment has been undertaken, and that shows that the development will not generate a significantly different level of traffic when compared to the existing or previous use and the 2022 planning permission. The Highway Authority has raised no objections to the application, so subject to the imposition of conditions, it's considered that the proposal will be acceptable. And that's just another view to show the materials. That's obviously the corner of High Street with Merrill Street. That's a close-up of the different materials that are proposed. So obviously you saw the majority of it is this standing seam cladding in the copper colour, and then there's the profiled metal cladding here in the dark grey. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, I'm not aware of any objectors to this application, so I'll leave it up to members to comment, please. Councillor Wheelman.
Can I do all three things in one go and then get one answer? Okay. There's an open access area, you said, that leads through to sort of, if for want of a better word, recreational or resting or relaxing area. The only thing that I would concern me there is security provisions for residents, because if there is open access to that, there's possibly access to their residences. That's one. The other thing is, the minute you said the word cladding, if you say cladding to these people, to people these days, they just sort of, grab for the gin and Valium and go and rock up a corner because of all sorts of horrendous things that have happened in the past. So it would be helpful if that was explained as to the structure of it, the content of it, the viability of it. And the materials look absolutely super, and it'll look great with trees and things and the pots that we have around the town. But if I look at the Brunswick site and London Road 1, which looked absolutely superb when it was first put up, although query is, has someone been mindful about the weathering effect on the copper and the other colours that go on? Because, I mean, Brunswick looks as if it should be demolished. It's so horrendous and dirty, and presumably they've got a management company who should be painting it but are not. Those are my concerns in a baggage.
Councillor Wielden, come back, Rachel.
So in response to your queries about security, so the access into the residential units will be security controlled, so only the residents will be able to get in. Well, they'll have like a code or a fob or whatever. So that will prevent anybody else getting in. And I think in terms of the use of that area at the rear, that area of open space, there'll be surveillance of that area by people who live there. So that tends to discourage any antisocial behaviour anyway, because it's not a dark corner tucked away somewhere with nobody watching. There are people living there, and at night they'd have lights on, and that they'd be aware that people could potentially be looking at them. But as well, there'll be CCTV provided, and the applicant has submitted quite a lot of details in response to comments that were received from the police that address a number of concerns. So there'll be a lot of security measures in place, which alongside the natural surveillance of it being a well-used, active space, should mean that it won't be prone to antisocial behaviour. And then in terms of the cladding, I absolutely hear what you're saying about the Brunswick Court development and number 1 London Road. In terms of what the cladding looks like and the weathering of it, it's very different to the materials that are used on those buildings. It's a long time ago now, and cladding, the spec of those materials has come on hugely since then. So we don't have any concerns about the weathering of them. And in relation to this, the safety aspects, the fire hazards, etc., I can't comment in detail because it's not a planning matter. It's more something that would be covered by building regs. But absolutely, there'll be no doubt that the materials that are being used will comply with all the relevant building regulations and safety aspects. So I hope that answers.
Thank you, Rachel. Very thorough answer. Thank you.
Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, once again, another exciting development for the town centre. Not exciting as the Midway car park, I'm afraid, but that really does excite me, that one. But nonetheless, my main point really is it's more people living in the town, which people in the town might go out in the town, they might spend money in the town, they might go and have a meal in the town, have a drink or whatever. And I think it's all just bringing the town back to life. And this is the third of the schemes to bring people into the town centre. Again, when you look at the skeleton of the building now, when you walk past there, you can very much see the capital-centric way of doing it, because it's like the bare bones. It's like a dinosaur's rib cage type thing, isn't it? All these things that they obviously left in place in situ, and then they're going to build it all around it, which is obviously the way that capital-centrics believe they should do, and not waste tons and tons of carbon bringing more concrete into it. So no, I think it's an innovative idea, and I think it's absolutely excellent. I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd like to re-echo what Councillor Sweeney said about construction techniques. Again, it's nice to see that we don't have to actually flatten something, but we can repurpose something and make it live again. York Place, I don't know, I have a little bit of sympathy for it. I can remember queuing up for the memoirs of Margaret Thatcher in the days when there was a bookshop on the corner. It's a book that still occupies a treasured place on my bookshelves. But it is, it has to be said, something which is lost ground over time. And indeed, in terms of security, I'd like to say to Councillor Wheeldon, I mean, having followed this for a long time now through the development. And again, I'd like to thank Capital and Centric for engaging with the council in the way they have done. This isn't a take it or leave it development. It has been now an active partnership in that regard. Security has been part of it. I was worried about the square at the back to start with, but I think now I'm convinced that this will be a good open square. In fact, really rather more secure in some ways than the somewhat dingy corridor that York Place had towards its end. I'm also, of course, as a historian, pleased that the Old Bull's Head will be treated in a good fashion. It's the second oldest building in our town centre, so it's something we should be looking after. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here who was delighted to discover that when that wretched Irish pub went away, that the lovely tiles of the Bull's Head were still there behind that facade. So that's really nice to see. As we've seen, this is bringing, as Councillor Sweeney said, people into the town centre. I've already said that. In my personal opinion, that's a very good thing. But also, of course, on the ground floor level, we are retaining that retail aspect, and hopefully this refreshed version of York Place will re-enhance the retail offer in the town centre. And my personal view would be the fact that people are living there is likely to do that for these smaller units and to have some independent quality retailers in the town. Who knows, maybe another bookseller. I personally would very much welcome that.
Councillor Fear. Any other comments, please? Councillor Brown.
I noticed on page 36 we have another viability assessment with the conclusion that a contribution won't be made. And as Councillor Holland indicated earlier, it is regrettable to see this. And I just hope that we're not kicking some cans down the road, particularly in consideration of contributions for the park. I mentioned the Brampton Park. We've seen that it's very difficult to maintain the parks to the standard that we would like. So I just want to say on record that that is regrettable.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other comments, please? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't go as far as Councillor Brown and say regrettable. When you look at schemes that are going to permit new retail and new residential occupiers of old buildings that are currently vacant, you have to take into account the strengthening of our tax base as a borough council that comes from that. You know, money will flow both into our local economy and into our local authority as a result of the occupation of those units. Although, of course, it would be much better if we could achieve a full financial contribution from every piece of development that happens. The global and national economy sometimes makes it difficult. That is specifically what the valuers are looking at, and it is unfortunately the law that we're not able to insist on those things. But clearly in this case, if we were to insist on that, we would miss out on all of the benefits that go with the schemes, including the one that we're looking at now. If I'm very honest, of the schemes that are in front of us tonight, the design of this one is the least exciting to me. I can see why it's designed the way it is, and I am very content with the materials and the facings that are proposed. I think, to reflect on what Councillor Wheeldon said, the people who manufacture cladding these days tend to use euphemisms to describe the product that they're creating. Those are external facing materials these days, and not cladding, because of, well, there are so firstly, there is the very grave and serious safety concern associated with cladding. And secondly, as our officer pointed out early, technology and material science has come on a long way since this council and others were approving buildings that have deteriorated in a very significant way over the years and the decades since they were put up. So I have every confidence, as part of the building control process and as part of the discharge of consents on this, that we will have very high quality materials used. And again, the appropriate point of reference is not a clean slate on this item. It is what was there before. And when you consider the historic pub, when you consider St Giles Church, there is, I think, immediately opposite on the other side of the War Memorial, a half-timbered building, which also has great architectural and heritage value. This is a part of the town centre that certainly wasn't done huge favours by the architecture of York Place. Using the bones of that in an innovative way, regenerating it rather than knocking it flat and starting again. Clearly, the application that's been made to us, I think, is acceptable. I do like to give a clear shake, and in the supplementary report on this item, there was a representation received on this, and I like to give representations from the public their due regard. A lot of what's in that representation we have discussed tonight. You know, I would be concerned about the policing and community safety aspect, but that has been addressed through clear lines of dialogue with the applicant and the police and the council. Other items that were raised by that public representation are things that we simply don't have a handle on. I think, yes, perhaps the person who made the representation would like to see residential accommodation at ground floor level. I don't think that would be appropriate at this site, given its previous retail use at ground floor level. But also, that's not what's proposed. And a taller building, which is referred to, again, is not what's proposed. So considering what was there before, considering the application that's been made to us tonight and the benefits associated with that, this is again an item that I would be very strongly in favour of supporting. And I cannot remember on this occasion if Councillor Fear has moved the recommendation to printed, but perhaps I will get the honour, the dignity of moving that recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Duly noted. Any other councillors wishing to comment? Councillor Gordon.
Yes, sir. Quick comment, if I may, Chairman. First of all, I'm reassured by our officers' comments concerning the durability of the building material and how it will look in 3-4 years' time, which obviously must be a concern. The question I wanted to raise is that I thought at one time there was some discussion around this application of a music venue in the basement. Has that, if it's in the papers that have been distributed, I can't remember reading about it. Has that now been excluded, Chairman, from the application? It's no longer part of the scheme. It would be a pity, but...
Thank you for that question, Councillor Gordon. Officers are able to answer that. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. The scheme as originally submitted did include that, but then amended plans were received and that has been omitted from the scheme.
Are we able to elaborate on why that's been the case?
Unfortunately not, but I do believe that there may be, and I look to the applicant just to see if he can nod, that it may be something that in the future they will look to incorporate in the scheme, but it's just not in the scheme that's before you tonight.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the subterranean one, like the Roman candle in Hanley, if people can remember that, is not going ahead. However, there is a plan to have a sort of a ground floor space there, and to cover it. But the underground version, that's gone now in the initial plans.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Any other comments? Councillor Fear.
Merely to say, Mr. Chair, I don't think we've had a formal seconder, and since Councillor Holland has done the honours for me previously, I would like to reciprocate for him.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Duly noted. Do we see any other proposals or any further comments? In which case, we've had it formally proposed by Councillor Holland and seconded by Councillor Fear to accept as printed in front of you. Can I see a show of hands, please, in support of the recommendations? Thank you. That is again unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That item's passed. Brings us on to the last substantive item on the agenda tonight, item 7. Former civic offices, Merrill Street, Newcastle-under-Lyme. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a few slides on this one because there's quite a bit to the scheme to show you. So I'll hopefully be as quick as I can. So full planning permission is sought for residential development comprising 175 dwellings and associated landscaping on this site, which again is part of the wider master plan aspiration for Rycroft. You can see there the multi-storey car park, and this is the site here of the McCarthy Stone development that we spoke about previously. So the proposed development would consist of 4 main development zones. So development zone 1 here, which is the northern parcel adjacent to the new multi-storey car park, and that would comprise 3 blocks of terraced housing. Zone 2 and 3 in green and blue would form the central link zone connecting the town centre with the wider residential area to the north, and would comprise apartments. And then area 4, which is the corner plot fronting onto Merial Street and Corporation Street, and that would comprise a courtyard arrangement of apartments. So accommodation across the site would include studios, 1 and 2 bed apartments, and 3 and 4 bed houses. A lot to see on this slide, but so you can see the multi-storey car park there and the McCarthy Stone development. So it's quite a good one to show you everything in context. So this is a green link, landscaped link that's proposed through the site, acting as the green heart to the scheme. So this is the northern area that I referred to as development zone 1. So that would comprise 2 and 3 storey terraced houses located around shared gardens with areas of private defensible space. Pitched and monopitched roofs are proposed, with materials comprising a simple palette of red brick for the majority of the dwellings, with a limited number of properties comprising a light grey brickwork. So these are the elevations which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. The materials are there in the centre, and then over here there's, obviously they don't look particularly great on these at this scale, but you can see there an image of what they would look like, the monopitched units in particular. So then the sorry, just I've lost my place. Sorry, just going back to that one. So this has areas of periphery parking provided to the western edge of the application zone, freeing up the interior of the site for pedestrian movement and activity. And extensive landscaping would be proposed along here, which would provide some acoustic buffering to the A52. So the new green spine that I referred to earlier would be lined either side by 2 4-storey apartment buildings, ensuring that this key public route benefits from surveillance. The longer block, which is the one that you can see here, would comprise dark grey profiled cladding and grey brickwork with accentuated reveals and butterfly roof profiles, which is what you can see there, creating a distinctive style. And then in contrast, the shorter block would comprise red brickwork with a flat roof. I'll show you some images later which show better really what they'll look like. So this is an image of the green spine that we were referring to between the 2 blocks that we've just talked about. So there's the longer block on the right-hand side and the shorter, smaller block on the left. So then to the south, this is the corner that I pointed out previously, Corporation Street and Merial Street. So a new courtyard building is proposed around a green public courtyard, providing an enclosed public green space. The blocks would have a prominent presence on Merial Street and Corporation Street, with a relationship back to the town centre and the neighbouring redevelopment at York Place. So this is the elevations of those buildings, which, as you saw on here, they're shown on the ground floor as separate individual blocks, but they're linked at higher levels by the access, at the higher level connecting the blocks, and they're proposed on the courtyard's interior. So that's probably the best image to show you of those blocks. So Corporation Street, Merial Street, red brickwork with significant areas of detailing to the brickwork to provide interest. Interesting reveals here to the windows, pitched roofs that you can see. There's 5 gables at that point, and then other elements of the building are flat roofed. So this is some streetscapes to show you the relationship with the existing buildings. So we're looking here from Merial Street, that's Corporation Street that would run down the side of the building. So existing buildings here on Merial Street and the McCarthy Stone development would be behind there. And this is an elevation from Corporation Street. So you can see here the housing, the 2- and 3-story housing that's to the north of the site. And then you've got the 2 blocks with the green walkway between. I referred to the butterfly design of the roofscape that you saw there. And then the corner block at the corner with Merial Street. These are useful to show you overall what the site would look like. So again, there, multi-storey car park. These are the 3 rows of houses, and then you've got the 2 blocks of apartments with the green link through that would lead pedestrians from this area of the town through towards the town centre and the York Place development, and then beyond down towards the Guildhall, and then down towards the Midway. And another view, just looking at it from above the corner of Corporation Street and Merial Street, so just looking back across the other way. So you can see there the courtyard development that I referred to with the 5 gables there, the green link through the centre, and then the dwellings, the residential houses over on this side. So the landscape master plan would be formed from 5 distinctive landscape characters complementing each other to make a livable and sustainable place for residents. So the public open spaces in the scheme would provide the residents and the wider community with a place for social interaction and informal, safe children's play. The area would include significant tree and shrub planting, natural play features, swales and rain gardens, all of which would increase biodiversity. So the site is adjacent to the northwestern boundary of the conservation area. The Conservation Officer agrees with the findings of the submitted heritage statement stating that the proposal provides a positive opportunity for the town and the conservation area by providing an attractive setting for the heritage assets, allowing interesting views and creating a contemporary but respectful new design for Newcastle. It's considered that the development would be of high quality, with the proposed dwellings set within an extensively landscaped parkland. The different character areas would create a variety of verdant spaces, with planting and boundary treatments helping to define areas, with the provision of accessible routes throughout, ensuring that the site is opened up for all. The proposals would provide a design solution that's both responsive to the heritage context, as well as providing new links to the northern neighbourhoods across the A52. The proposed site layout would be largely vehicle-free. Clearly defined pedestrian routes would be provided throughout the landscape layout, which would provide access to the dwellings and a means of accessing the site via Corporation Street, Merrill Street and Rycroft. I'll just go back to show you the site layout. So the development would provide 21 parking spaces. So the houses which are in this part of the site here, 15 houses, and there would be 15 spaces, so 1 space per dwelling. And then the apartments would be provided with a total of just 6 spaces across the site. Temporary stopping activity for deliveries and servicing is proposed via provision of a new loading bay here on Corporation Street. It's where there's a number of parking spaces at the moment. They will be changed through a traffic regulation order to a temporary stopping area. The Highway Authority has no objections to the proposal, subject to the imposition of conditions. So overall, it's considered that the scheme would regenerate a previously developed site in a highly sustainable location and contribute positively to the vitality and viability of the town centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to go on record for this, as I find this one, out of all the ones that we've heard tonight, the most exciting and appealing to myself. This is a massive and ambitious scheme. 4 zones provide that interest and multifaceted part of living for potential occupants. I love the green thread and spine going through it. What I particularly like is the fact that it's part of that gateway of major buildings that will be from the northwestern boundary that as you approach Newcastle, but also remembering to link in with the previous applications that we've heard tonight as part of the master planning for Newcastle and the once in a lifetime opportunity to spend the investment that we've been bestowed upon us, which I find very exciting. And subject to members' further comments, I would like to formally propose this development. Thank you. Over to you, councillors. Councillor Wealdon.
I'd just like to make the almost official comment, if you like, of how much work has gone into this on all parties. And Rachel, you've done an absolutely sterling job. I shouldn't think you've slept very much. It's immaculate, and I'm just a substitute, so I've come to this completely fresh, reading the documents the last couple of days, and it was very readable, very easily explained, and thank you for asking all the questions so well tonight. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Fear.
Mr. Chairman, you'll be happy to have these comments because I agree with you. I might be mugged by Councillor Sweeney and his love of former car parks, but I do think that this is possibly the most exciting of these developments. We've tried very hard when developing the local plan here in the borough to make sure that we develop on brownfield sites. This seems to me an absolutely ideal example of what we can achieve. We've made a major contribution to housing in the borough. Let's hope that the government doesn't jack that up further, but we can't do anything about that. But nonetheless, here, I think we've developed in exactly the right place. And not only have we done that, this isn't sort of let's pack them in. And I can think of some developments as I go into the middle of Manchester where former scrap yards have been, people have really rammed things in. Whereas here we've managed to retain a nice green feeling to the development, haven't we? I too very much like the green corridor, the way that we can see into the town centre all the way from the ring road. And I think that that makes this in many ways. I'm almost persuaded that the butterfly roof is a nice thing. Now, nothing is perfect in this sublunary sphere, but I would have preferred a few more pitch roofs. But nonetheless, I think, you know, when one looks at this, and that screen, I think, is a very good screen. The only thing that's slightly disturbing, I think, is it doesn't do justice to the McCarthy Stone development, or indeed the car park, which would have sort of fleshed that out that little bit more. But here, I think that and the aerial view show us how you can develop on brownfield without just having a sort of Coronation Street serried set of housing, that we can actually do something with these sites which make them good places to live. So in that respect, I'm with you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to formally second this, because I do think that this is a very, very good development.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Any other comments, please? Councillor Sweeney.
And a quickie, Chairman. There's a fourth planning application tonight, and it's a fourth one that's going to bring people living in the town centre. And I can't think of what's the word? I can't think of a bad word to say about that, really. People in the town centre spend money in the town centre. We generate our town centre, and I think it's an excellent scheme. I still think it's not as exciting as Midway. That's my personal opinion, but I do think it's an excellent scheme, and it looks really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Any other comments? Okay, just make a final comment, and that's to thank our officers and also councillors for interacting with the developers who have worked with this council on our journey to this point. They've listened to comments that have been generated by councillors, and I draw on the councillor that isn't here tonight, Councillor John Williams, who's been quite vocal in making this work so well. But the fact that hard work has been done, not just here, but outside this meeting, and the brevity of some of the comments tonight don't really play the hand that we've actually put a lot of hard work collectively into these schemes. And I just wish it every success. So I formally propose this from the chair. I've been seconded kindly by Councillor Fear. Can I see a show of hands in support of the recommendations as printed? And that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That item is obviously passed. So that's a clean sweep of applications this evening. I've got no items of urgent business. Is there any items of urgent business? I indicate that's a negative. So it just leaves me to close the meeting. Thank you for your indulgence tonight and getting through the agenda items so swiftly and efficiently. And thank you for the developers for attending this evening. I wish you all a safe journey. This item is now finished. Meeting closed. Thank you.